Welcome to the Vibe Natural Health Podcast. This is Research Roundup with Ananda Mahony.
Hello, this is Ananda Mahony, and in this episode of Research Roundup, I'm looking at the role of potassium in rheumatoid arthritis, a debilitating condition associated with pain, reduced mobility, and overall a significantly reduced quality of life. The research I'll be looking at today basically highlights the importance of potassium in management or potential management of rheumatoid arthritis. I'll also look at the impact that low potassium can have on those living with rheumatoid arthritis and what you can do to ensure that your potassium levels are helping you and not hindering. The rheumatoid arthritis is a really inflammatory condition, and there are systemic consequences of that inflammation that spill out beyond the confines of the condition and impact on other systems, increasing the risk of conditions like cardiovascular disease and depression. Because of this, effective treatment is critical. The current medications are aimed at reducing pain, and this is really important, but those medications such as steroids, non-steroidal anti-inflammatories and some biological medications come with some significant side effects and risk. And for that reason, it's really important to look at non-pharmaceutical approaches to allow for either an overall reduction in medication use or a tapering off of medication use entirely. Diet-based approaches, I think, are significantly overlooked as part of chronic pain management generally, and certainly they're not included in the current treatment guidelines for rheumatoid arthritis, despite some quite good research in this area. So let's delve into the research. The paper I'm looking at today is by Kanafard and Chopra, and it suggests that people with rheumatoid arthritis have low levels of potassium generally. And why is that relevant is the question. Well, potassium's a really key nutrient in cell health. It also helps with the conduction of nerve impulses, so sending of messages throughout our body, and importantly is involved in cardiovascular health. The researchers reviewed a number of papers looking at the role of potassium in rheumatoid arthritis, and what these papers suggest is that supplementation with potassium can help reduce joint pain, inflammation, and reduce the risk of cardiovascular comorbidities, and that's significant. When we look at these populations in the studies, there's two reasons why potassium may be low that are cited as the most common. And the first one is low dietary intake, and this was indeed shown in one Indian study. Women with rheumatoid arthritis had diets very low in potassium, which the authors suggested could be due to fad diets. It could also be due to an increasing westernisation of diets, because the standard Australian or standard American diet is particularly low in potassium. The second reason might be a high demand for potassium in rheumatoid arthritis, and I think that this is significant. This condition is associated with a raised metabolic state, meaning that there's more use of critical nutrients. They're used up faster, and this is particularly the case with potassium. It's also associated with a high acid load overall and a disturbed pH of the blood. And again, this leads to increased use of potassium as a compensatory mechanism to help buffer and lower the pH. This overutilisation results in a net deficiency of potassium. Now, at this point, it's important to note that too much or too little potassium is actually a medical emergency. But early abnormal levels can be asymptomatic for a very long time or result in vague symptoms such as muscle pain and low energy, so may be put down to other conditions or other disease states. There are other reasons for low potassium in rheumatoid arthritis, and one of them may be due to a hormone called cortisol. Cortisol is one of our stress hormones, and it has a critical role in the body modulating inflammation. In fact, rheumatoid arthritis is actually considered a low cortisol state disorder. Again, why is this important? Low cortisol leads to low potassium in the body, and low potassium can further exacerbate low cortisol levels. So what does this mean overall? More inflammation. I also want to bring in the element of chronic pain here, because as you know, that's something I'm particularly interested in. there is a role, or there's potentially some implications for low potassium in chronic pain generally. So chronic pain is associated with abnormal sensory nerve excitation, which means there's more activity being sent to the brain, more danger signals, and then the brain responds by protecting the body or moving out of danger. So essentially, chronic pain is a state of hyperexcitability of the nerves. Low potassium levels can further exacerbate that hyperexcitability. They can lead to increased nerve stimulation and irritability, and that means more danger signals being sent to the brain. So overall, low potassium levels may contribute or facilitate the development of chronic pain. So of course, when we look at this research, the question is, does increasing potassium status improve rheumatoid arthritis symptoms? There is some research in this area, but what we do have is limited. However, one double-blind placebo-controlled trial looked at 36 seropositive women with rheumatoid arthritis, and seropositive means that the markers for rheumatoid arthritis showed up in their blood. And they were supplemented with potassium over a 28-day period. The participants in the trial stayed on their usual medication and ate a routine diet, so nothing else changed. The results were significant, and they showed a reduction in pain and inflammation in the treatment group compared to the placebo arm. This was not only clinically significant, it was also statistically significant. So the results of this study sound positive. However, there are some caveats to potassium supplementation, specifically with cardiovascular disease. So yes, potassium can help and hinder in cardiovascular disease, but also with kidney disease and blood pressure medications. So it's really important to check with a healthcare professional before supplementing, and an ideal person would be your naturopath or nutritionist. There are other ways to improve potassium status that don't involve supplementation, and this brings me right back to non-pharmaceutical diet-based approaches, which is what I touched on at the beginning of this podcast. A Mediterranean diet has been shown to reduce inflammation in rheumatoid arthritis, and while there's many positive aspects to this diet, including lashings of olive oil, a significant proportion of the Mediterranean diet is vegetables and fruit. And guess what? Potassium is found in vegetables and fruit, particularly vegetables. So upping your intake is the key to increasing your levels. However, by this, I don't just mean a few serves a day. Actually, I mean more like 7 to 10 serves a day to really get your levels up, particularly if you have rheumatoid arthritis. How do you do this? How do you get that much fruit and vegetable in? Well, here's some tips. Ensure that you have at least 2 meals a day that are 3/4 vegetable. And what I mean by that, if you look at the plate, 3/4 of that plate needs to be covered with vegetables. Add a few pieces of fruit in between meals and have a vegetable juice. My particular favourite for rheumatoid arthritis is cucumber and celery juice. Give it a go. A savoury juice for morning tea may just help reduce pain and inflammation for the day. So that's it for the research roundup on potassium and rheumatoid arthritis today. In my next podcast, I'll look at links between emotional states and skin conditions.
For more information and bookings, find us online at vibenaturalhealth.com.au.